Okay, Brother Darrell, we on? Okay, Brother Darrell.
Greetings and welcome to another powerful edition of the Community Defender Talk Show, one powerful hour of truth in a day of falsehood. I'm your host, Brother Darrell Muhammad. We're very glad that you have tuned in to tonight's program. And of course, we have a show planned for you that it will be thought provoking. And the whole, I would say, a major aspect of the program is to get our people to think outside of the box that European society, European education, and that the American media, which misdirects people, that we want you to think outside of that box. And we believe that our people need to be raised up into what we call a living perpendicular. That is, raised up and standing upright as a people with self-respect and dignity. And for us to be able to free ourselves from the cognitive bondage or the mental chains that we suffer from. So this show is designed to be thought-provoking, not to go along with the narrative of mainstream media. So when some people see a show like this and maybe they hear a person like me, sometimes you may be taken aback because like, I've never heard this before. What is this? It's the truth. It is the truth. It is the truth. We put things out here that are true, not just a narrative to make people feel good, but to make people think, more in accord with the truth. All right, and you gotta think. This is a show for thinkers. If you are not a thinker, you may have a difficult time with the community defender, and that's just what it is. Now, I wanted to mention this. This weekend, we celebrated. I'm going to show you the Final Call newspaper. We celebrated the 30th anniversary of the Million Man March. And the Million Man March was the largest gathering in the history of Washington, D.C., the most peaceful of all gatherings. And it was led by the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, but it dealt with atonement, reconciliation, and responsibility. The Million Man March was fought against by the mainstream media, and the mainstream media and those with the mainstream media enlisted Negroes to speak against the march and to undermine the march, to talk down on the success of the march. But thousands of children, of black children, were adopted as a result of a call by the Honorable Louis Farrakhan for these children to be adopted. Children were adopted, families were made, families were repaired as a result of the doctrine that the Honorable Louis Farrakhan put out there at the Million Man March. And as you know, if you don't know, Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, Dr. Betty Shabazz, and others were at the march, participated in the march. And I wanted to mention this because it says something. There's a lot in the march that you got to think about. Now, remember in 1963 when there was a march on Washington, and the headline speaker was our beloved brother, Dr. King. Now, the famous I Have a Dream speech made famous by the mainstream media. Now, there were other speeches that he made which were even better than that, but they dealt with black self-sufficiency. And so since they dealt with black self-sufficiency, the enemy did not see fit to make you know about those speeches. So they give you a processed Martin Luther King, a processed Malcolm X, right? A processed Elijah Muhammad, and never give you the real unfiltered version of these men, a processed Marcus Garvey, right? And they never give you the real. Now, when you look at the march, and I'm just going to lay this out here because I'm not trying to, we all on the same team if you're for the liberation of our people. Now, Martin Luther King and that march in 1963 all of the speeches had to be approved by the Kennedy administration. All of the speeches had to be approved by the Kennedy administration in order for those speeches to be had on the mall. They were approved by the Democrat administration at that time, unlike the Million Man March when there was no approval of what would be said. So already we're doing independent evaluations of ourselves, on ourselves, which was different from 1963, not to disparage it, but just laying out the facts. Everything had to be approved by the Caucasians in the Kennedy administration, and the Honorable Louis Farrakhan saw fit that everybody could say whatever was on their heart, and there was no approval. The other thing is that the march in 63 was financed and backed by white philanthropy. White philanthropy is what paid for the 1963 march. Understand, that's what paid for it. I'm not saying it was a bad march. I'm just telling you where the source of funding was and is with the march. It was white philanthropy, as opposed to the Million Man March, which was totally funded by our people, by black men, black women, black businesses. People donated, and that's where it came from. It came from us. Now, follow me now, because I'm trying to get to something. Now, all my life, when I was in high school, when I was in middle school, I was told that 100,000 people gathered in 1963, which sounded like a really big number. 100,000 people get together. I'm like, wow, that was a lot of people. Later on, after the Million Man March, the revisionists in history said it was 250,000. Later on, they said that the march in Washington in 63 had 400,000. So again, they kept going up. In other words, you go back to what was written about the march then, in terms of the number of people, you will find that as of late, they expanded that march in history to compete with the march that happened later on in history. Now, we know, according to all of the, I guess, the satellite imagery, it was around 2 million men. The Russians said that it was 1.7 million men based upon their satellite imaging, that it was 1.7 men. The mainstream media tried to say it was 400,000, but later they backed up off of that because there may have been some legal action. But the bottom line of it is you're looking at 2 million men, between 1.7 and 2 million men on the mall. Now, I want you to look at something. Now, whether you believe that the march on Washington in 63 was 100,000, as I was told in middle school and high school, or 250,000, as was said right after the Million Man March, or 400,000, okay? We have to agree that that march was smaller than the Million Man March, and I'm getting at something. I'm not trying to disparage the march in 63 because those people were working for equality. They were working for the right to vote. They were working for some noble objectives. But I'm getting to something, and I need y'all to hear me. And that's not to disparage that march. All right. That's not to talk down on that march, because the Million Man March with Honorable Louis Farrakhan was a larger march. But it is to say that the march that was funded by white people and done supposedly in cooperation with outsiders was smaller than the march that we did by ourselves. What we did as black men was larger than what we did with them. Gonna say it again. What we did as black men with the support of our beautiful women was larger than what we ultimately were able to do with white philanthropy. and with white people in the Kennedy administration approving or disapproving the speeches before the speeches could be made. In other words, the thing was choreographed by outsiders rather than those of us on the inside. Whereas the Million Man March was a more organic march where people said what they wanted to say. So when Jesse Jackson met with the Honorable Louis Farrakhan the morning of the march, he said, "How much time will you give me, Minister Farrakhan?" And the Honorable Louis Farrakhan said, "Brother, I can't put a time limit on you. You just speak what's in your heart." And there it went. And there it went. Now, before we get, and the topic that we're dealing with on tonight is we are at war. We are at war. And a war is a conflict. A war has an aim and an objective. The objective of any war, part of it is to kill the perceived enemy or to make the enemy bow. Okay? That's the objective. So the objective, if we're at war, then that means there's an enemy that wants to kill us and or to make us bow down and not assert ourselves and not be dominating within our own community, right? And white folks often define war in the military as forcing your will on another. And that's what happens. That's what has happened with Black people. Other people's will has been forced on us. And that's why it was so disheartening when for the Million Man March that the NAACP and the Urban League could not endorse the march because they were controlled very often by white philanthropy. Understand, when people say, "Well, I'm going to help you. I'll put up some money," then they are able to control what goes on. White philanthropy can open up a school, or sometimes white philanthropy can suggest that you close down your school of engineering at an HBCU. Okay, philanthropy is not to help you. Most of the time, philanthropy from outsiders is to control you. And that's what I wanted to lay out there. The Million Man March was bigger in part because we did it. And it is a sign that what we do as a people on our own will be bigger than anything we do supposedly with the help of other people. I'm just going to lay it out there. All right. That may be a hard pill to swallow because many of us have been subjected to white supremacist philosophy. And we as Black people believe that white is right. See, white supremacy is not effective if only white people believe it. They've got to make you and I believe it. And that's why when you get out of college, you've heard of Plato. You've heard of Nietzsche. You've heard of Sigmund Freud. You've heard of all of these Europeans, but many of you have never read W.E.B. Du Bois, The Souls of Black Folks. You don't know anything. Many of you have never even heard of Maya Angelou. You don't know anything about your own people and what your own people have produced in the way of literature, have produced in the way of philosophical thought. You don't know about it. So all of your references in life are European references. And that's what we're trying to stop. We're trying to give you another reference that's not from anybody but yourself. It's not about hating other people, but you better love yourself. Yeah, I want y'all to be clear on that. Love your Black self. Now, we have a wonderful 6-minute clip that we're going to run. And of course, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan 30 years ago was on the Mall in Washington and delivered I mean, you really just need to go on C-SPAN or YouTube and watch the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's remarks. You know, you may want to do it in one day like I did, like we did today in the celebration, or you may want to do it over a couple of days. But his words are worth some serious analysis. And they are more relevant. They were relevant at the time, but that's the timeless nature of God's plan. God's word is that it actually gets better over time. Now let's go ahead and run that 6-minute clip from the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, and then we're gonna get into our topic. We are at war.
There seems to be, among some of the other trials and travails, there seems to be that our young people are disinterested in organized religion, but yet gravitate to what I call organized chaos and organizations such as gangs. How do we re-engage our young people and redirect them?
We took our eyes off the prize. The prize was not integration as such. The prize was creating a future for our children. When the enemy began to close down factories in the inner city, where those of us who were not interested in a college education, there was always a trade school in every major city that would teach us trades. All the trade schools are shut down. In the inner city, girls were taught home economics, where they learned to cook and to sew and to do the things that caused them to be able to make a home. Today, our girls are beautiful, and they will spend a lot of money buying hair, but not money to put wisdom in their head as the mother of a nation. So here we are now. Our youth have been herded into behavior that is absolutely savage. But this was done by the government of the United States of America. I want to put the finger where it belongs. So there you have the Iran-Contra scandal,
Right.
where Iran was buying weapons from America, but the money was going to fight against socialism. King Fahd of Saudi Arabia gave $10 million, but the big money came from drugs that the CIA brought into America. They planned this, and out of that cocaine came crack, which is a chemical product, chemical warfare, being used now to get poor people to buy coke. Pleasure, yes, but madness afterwards. So now guns, gangs. Now it spreads like a plague to the East Coast. Guns, gangs, blood, Crip. And in Chicago, everywhere you look, there's a gang, and there's drugs, there's guns, there's death. Now, when you look at all of that, and you see us filling the jails, and you see us having no hope of a future, why should we go to church? We can't pray our way out of this alone. There has to be a plan effectuated by those of us who are stakeholders in the community. So, yes, our young people are in trouble, but they don't want anything to do with what you call organized religion. Organized? Who organized it? If it's organized, what was the purpose behind the organization? See, brother, if you look at Constantine, the Caesar of Rome, he had a vision. And in that vision, he saw a cross. And under it, he saw these words in Latin, in hoc signo vinces. With this sign, we conquer. And so with the cross as a symbol of white supremacy conquering in the name of Jesus, they went forth. Most of us are baptized in white supremacy through the church and have become docile and weak in the face of those who come in and slaughter us. So today, the church is being challenged. I sit and talk to preachers all the time, my brother, and I ask them, I say, Reverend, where are the young in your church? And I ask that of those who help me in the mosque.
Right.
Where are the young? Because we're all getting older, and I see old preachers, no youth. The church is dying. If you don't go out and get the youth and bring them to Christ, how can the church survive? So they be bringing hip hop into the church. You know, Jesus didn't travel with no band. We're hip hopping it up now, and now the sermons are entertainment. You're not teaching the people the wisdom of God that's found in the book.
Right.
Then you're compromising the gospel. I'm proud of T.D. Jakes when they questioned him when he didn't agree with same-sex marriage. He held up the Bible. That's what every preacher should do. If this is what God's word is and the Constitution is man's word, who you going to follow? If the Supreme Court legislates something that is against God's will, who you going to follow? So we chose and we choose to follow God.
And there you have it, brothers and sisters. That, of course, was the Honorable Louis Farrakhan asking a question that the brother had, that the reporter had, about people becoming disenchanted with organized religion as they have come to see it. And the Honorable Louis Farrakhan is absolutely right. You have to go after the young. You have to get the youth involved. And one of the things that I can say at the mosque I attend in Baton Rouge on last Sunday, we had a 21 and 22-year-olds delivering the message. Not only involved, but actually doing the preaching out front, doing performing the entire function, all the functions. We have young people that are trained, that can teach, that can preach, that can do whatever needs to be done, because as the Honorable Louis Farrakhan said, a youthless movement is a useless movement. And so a lot of people are overlooking the young because they can't tithe, but we in the Nation of Islam, we go after the young people. And not only do we go after them, we put them out front and we tell them, look, work on your character and work on your skill. Work on your character and work on your skill. All right. Now, getting back to this, we are at war. And
Brother Dal, we have a caller. You care to take him?
Yeah. Let me do this one definition, good brother. I'm about to do this definition if I can get it to pull up. All right, now, and let's define terms. One of the definitions of a war is an armed conflict, but another definition is a sustained effort to deal with or end a particular unpleasant, undesirable situation or condition, a state of competition, conflict, or hostility between different peoples or groups. Now, we know that there's been some hostility due to injustice between us and others. There's been hostility based upon mass incarceration, police brutality, housing discrimination, employment discrimination. There's been a prolonged period of hostility. In other words, there's been a war. And understand this issue with healthcare is part of what people do in war. If you know that water is on the way to soldiers that you want to kill, you will blow up the water truck. And if you know that medical attention is on the way, you will do something militarily to block the medical attention to the people that you want to kill. America desires to kill black people. I'm not saying it's every American, but I'm saying the general consensus is we need to be moved out of the way, destroyed, and in prison. That's the general consensus. All right. Now, if that's the general consensus and the government, a lot of times through these shots, wants to end our lives, right? We have to understand that this is what is going on. They want to end the life of our people. All right. And they're going to do it over time and through the means of deception to get us to buy into a system, to buy into something that's destroying us. And that's what you have to understand about this. We are at war, and soon America wants it to be an actual armed conflict because they know that they have arms that we as a people cannot match. That is the reason why all this stuff is going on with the troops being sent into major cities. They don't give a damn about crime. They don't care about human life. Hell, cigarettes are legal. Cigarettes kill nearly 500,000 Americans every year, and cigarettes are legal. The most deadly product in the world is legal. So the idea that cigarettes could be legal and kill almost 500,000 people, and yet you're worried about children and measles, doesn't make any doggone sense. That's not even plausible. You're worried about making sure that 2 children a year don't die of measles, but yet cigarettes are legal and they kill 480,000 people in America each and every year. Come on now, think about it. Or do they really give a damn about children and measles and mumps and all of this? No, they don't care about that. Again, cigarettes are legal in the country. The most deadly product that we know of is legal. You can buy it at any store. Okay, it's legal. Go ahead. Let's go ahead and take this caller.
Okay, great. Good evening. Good evening, Brother Jay, and good evening to our brother that is hosting the show, Brother Darrell. Brother Darrell, you opened up the show with a few words that you made clear that tonight's show would be about, and it has a lot to do with thinking. And you can't really think too much if you're not listening. So you have to do them both, I truly believe. You have to be able to listen. You have to be able to understand too. And then you have to be able to speak afterwards. With that said, Brother Darrell, I want to start off by I want you to discuss with us on this weekend, I think it was Saturday, they had what is said to be called the No Kings March in the country. In many cities,
They had what now?
towns, municipalities, etc. But I know many cities, there was this thing called the No Kings March. I want you to talk to us from your perspective about what that was about and how do you feel about this march and what was the purpose? What do we hope to remind us? You talked about the march in the 60s. I think the year was 1967, maybe, but that march in the 60s and how it was funded and paid for. And then also you mentioned about the Million Man March and how it was funded and paid for. I want you to go over that again. Make sure that people fully understand, because if you just heard it and it zipped through your ears that fast, then it didn't soak in. So maybe they might need to understand what you were saying. Why did you put that march in the 60s with this march of the Million Man March, and you told about how they both came together and who paid for what for each one? And in closing, I want you to talk about why is it so important that the children, like Brother Lewis was saying, like the children, why is it so important that we must turn our attention and focus on our children? Because right now we see our children and what's happening, and that needs to change. We, as a people, have to do better in that, because they are going to come up behind us, after us, and they need some help. Thank y'all, and talk about those. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right. Well, the caller talked about a march that I'm not very familiar with. So I'm not going to speak on something that I'm not really familiar with conceptually. But what I will say is that the reason that I brought up how each march was funded and how each march was orchestrated was to show that we could do bigger things when we did them ourselves. It was not to disparage the march in 63, but it was to say that the march in 63 was not independent and therefore smaller because of the fact, in part, that it was not independent. It was controlled through money, and it was controlled in terms of what was said or what was expressed at that march. Okay. Other people outside of the black community controlled what was said, and every speech had to be run through in advance through the Kennedy administration, as opposed to the Million Man March, which was funded by us, for us, and nothing had to be approved through who was in office then? Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Through the Clinton administration.
Brother, we got another
everybody
call.
was able to say.
Brother Darryl, we got another call.
All right, yeah.
Go ahead, caller.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and take your caller, brother.
Go ahead, brother.
Hey, you can hear me, Jay?
Yes, you are.
Look, I heard Brother Darrell say he didn't know nothing about that No King's March. That was for white people trying to, so say, stop this dictator. And it was sponsored by another billionaire who just happened to be a Democrat. But that march has nothing to do with black people. And black people, stand your ground, stay out of this voting, stay out of Democratic, stay out of Republican, stay out of this government if you want to survive. But look, Brother Darrell, you was talking about how y'all march was done, sponsored by y'all and everything, but you mentioned the main key word, that it was supported by our black women. And that is the key, because lately our educated black women has been trying to compete with us, the black men. And this is what these white folks love to see us fight with our women. And these educated black women, and I'm not talking about the black women, but it's time for them to calm down and realize they do need real black men in their lives. And we might not be as indoctrinated as them, but we are educated enough with common sense to know they have been led astray to make them believe that we are their enemy. And this is how the war is created. It's called the education that is not even close to being education, but it's an indoctrination that when they get educated in the white European views, they become our enemies. This is the war that we are having right now with each other. The indoctrinated black people against the educated black people, which I call is having common sense enough to know what's right and wrong. We are following a system that has been designed, and I repeat, it's been designed to destroy the way we think. This is why when these black kids come back from colleges, they are lost, because they have no common sense to what's going on, because they have been indoctrinated with European views, and their point of view is to so-called make us become them, because now they think they are educated. And really they are not educated, because they don't even know their African history. They don't even know who they are. They believe they are European, because you have to become part of the United States so-called patriotism, which is always designed to destroy our black patriotism with each other. You know, I don't like talking about the education system that these black children are receiving, but I blame the parents. I heard that young man talk about the kids and how we are losing them. Yeah, every time we are sending them to an education system that refuses to teach them about themselves, not European history, but themselves, we lose them because they come back fighting their own feeling. And a lot of these educated black people that's on the council and black caucuses and the Democratic Party, they are our biggest enemy. And what you're talking about, Jay, brother Dower, is that we have to be organized within ourselves, just like y'all did y'all Million Man March and outdid the numbers that they did for the so-called civil rights movement that was sponsored by white people to give black people a delusion to their inclusion to this government, with 5 or 6 black head leaders who biggest agenda was to be present the white agenda to assimilate us to what they wanted us to be. And you mentioned the skills that Mr. Farrakhan said about our skills, that we was getting generational knowledge from our old school black people who was teaching us the skills. Same thing that y'all do in the Muslim, learning how to live off the earth, learning how to be self-employed with yourself, learning about what's going on, teaching our children they don't have to accept nothing that disrespects them. But these fraternities that when they go to college, like all these Greek fraternities, that's what they're not understanding. This is Greek fraternity. This is not African fraternity. You're emulating and assimilating to what the white man wants you to think and believe in. But we have to come together and realize the only way we save our humanity is for us to get together. And look, black women, I'm not talking about y'all because y'all are indoctrinated. I'm talking about y'all because y'all really believe the black men are your enemies, because we have woken up and realized y'all want to be the independent woman and be a family woman, but not realizing this was the white agenda: make the black women smarter in reading and writing so she could put down the black man. This is why child support was started too, to make sure to destroy the black man. If we go look through the government, you say we had at war. The government has created this war between us. Because you remember back in the day, a black man couldn't stay in these housing projects if they didn't have a job, even though the government was making sure they didn't get a job. That made the black woman and the child think the dad was a deadbeat dad. That way he could lose their respect as a man. And that's our biggest problem today. That's why they don't want role models like you, Brother Darrell, and other black men who speak up, because they are a threat to our next generation, which is our children. We have to see it to believe it. And our black children are not seeing no positive black males. And this is why they're shooting one another, because they do not know how to be socialized, because back in the day, these old black men showed us how to be socialized, but they showed us how to be respectable to one another. And this is why I always go against this voting scam, because that has been the biggest enemy to the black people. And the war was started by them. I saw you had that picture of Gary Webb's book, who released that Ronald Reagan was the biggest drug dealer and importer in America. But you don't hear the government talking about that, who got free, who didn't even go do charge. Matter of fact, Oliver North, who admitted that he bought all these drugs to make sure in the black communities they would be destroyed. So if we don't speak the truth and tell our side of the story, they're going to keep on giving their scenario of what we're supposed to be and why we are in this stage in our life. We have to get out of this government, guys. Follow our thoughts. Follow whatever is right for you, but this government has never been right for us. And to all those black sellouts, y'all are the problem. Politicians, black caucuses, all of y'all who believe this government can help black people, y'all are the infiltrators that Malcolm X, the Honorable Malcolm X, said. If you are an infiltrator working for the government, like the NAACP, Urban League, and all these nonprofit organizations as grown-ups, who has to go get white permission to do what they have to do for their community. That don't even make sense to me. But keep speaking what you're speaking, but please put the enemy in front. It is the government, and it is the educated, indoctrinated black people who always feel we got to assimilate to go and give these white people our power. Thank you, man.
Now, one of the weapons of war, they talk about biological and chemical weapons. They talk about biological and chemical weapons. One of the biological weapons that was used against us was what they made in their laboratory called HIV or AIDS. AIDS is a man-made virus that has killed millions of people, that has helped to depopulate Africa. That is a biological weapon. And crack cocaine, which was brought into America by the U.S. government, is a chemical weapon. So when we say we are at war, that's exactly what I mean. Now, it's not just Gary Webb that talked about this in the book Dark Alliance, but it is also, you can go to the Kerry hearings where people testified that they laundered after they sold the dope. This was right there in the U.S. Senate, where they literally testified that they had ways of laundering the money, and they used the dope money to fund the Contras. So you're talking about Ronald Reagan, his administration was a criminal enterprise, followed by another administration called the George Herbert Walker Bush administration, which was another criminal racist enterprise. And they have been absolutely at war with black people all the way back in the beginning. So there's been a war to destroy us. Now, one of the issues with healthcare, and I want to mention this, the reason that people don't want to expand Medicaid or didn't want to expand Medicaid in a lot of these states, even though a lot of whites need Medicare to be expanded, it's because of a war mentality. When you're in a war, you know that you're going to lose some of your people. But the idea is to kill more of them, even though you're going to lose some of yours. So when you talk about Medicaid and you talk about the different subsidies for those premiums to make health insurance affordable, they know that there may be blacks who will go to the doctor and their life will be saved. And so the real issue is not that it's socialized medicine. The real issue is that we may actually benefit from it, and some of us may actually get it and survive. Some of us may go to the doctor, find out we have cancer, and go into remission. And the whole issue, at each time that a national health care system was brought up, all the way back in the very, very beginning, it was because the reason we don't have it is because many people said black people will get it. The whole thing was to keep us away from healthcare. That was the reason why they rigged everything up to close down black medical schools, because they do not want you to live, which means they don't want you in mass with healthcare. That's the bottom line. That is the reason. It's not, well, it's socialized medicine. Because let me say this to you, when they want you to fight in their military to go steal other people's oil, what do? When you go into the recruiter's office, they offer you free housing, socialism, free food, socialism, free medical care, free clothes, free boots, free rucksack, free weapons. They offer you everything free. I want you to understand that. Talking about socialized clothing, socialized housing, socialized medical care. The vehicles, the Army vehicles that you ride in are free. Everything is free. So they put you on a base or they deploy you and you have no expenses. That's socialism. But they tell you that you can't have socialism or you can't have free medical care because that's bad. But that's exactly what the Army recruiter, the Marine recruiter, the Air Force recruiter offers you when you walk into the recruiting office. They offer you the same socialism that they say they're against. And the whole idea behind it is that they don't want you to get it. If they expand Medicaid in Alabama and Georgia, too many of you will get it. It's not about, and understand that Governor Bobby Jindal, refused $1 billion a year that was going to come directly into his state and add $1 billion to the economy of Louisiana. In Georgia, it's $2, $3, maybe $4 billion that Brian Kemp doesn't want in. Okay, you go to Alabama, you go to Mississippi. All of these states stand to get billions of dollars, but they know that black people will survive, that more black people will go to the doctor, that more black people will have health insurance. And they would rather see some of their own people die. And that's what war is all about. You know you're going to lose some of your soldiers, but you expect to kill more of them than they kill of you. And that's the way they're treating us. They're using, it's not an armed conflict, but they are using the same principles of war, right? And they are attacking us on all sides. They're
Brother
attacking you in
Darrell,
the school.
we have a call. We have a call, Brother Darrell.
All right, let's go ahead and take
Go ahead, caller.
that call right quick.
Go ahead, caller. Caller.
Yes. Yes. Good evening. Another spectacular program. I wanted to mention that some people don't understand what a comment is. It's only their opinion, and for Mr. Kevin and Coach to take up that much time when you already have your program outlined, I just don't understand it. One already have a TV show. You don't see us calling him left and right, and that's what I wanted to mention. Y'all do that on your own show, and Coach, we'll even help you with your own show. Also, I wanted to mention that with the 30-year anniversary, brother Darrell, it was powerful, and till today it's still really good. However, I know it was just, well, they did have some women there, but it was just for the men to get themselves together. Am I correct, sir?
Yeah, it was definitely aimed at men, so that you could receive a renewed man, and it was with the great support of black women, both economically, logistically, and as I said before, Maya Angelou, Dr. Betty Shabazz, the president of the Negro Council of Women, Dorothy Height, was there. She spoke. So many, women spoke at the Million Man March. Caller, are you there? All right. Did we lose the caller? Okay. Well, to get back to what, the line that I was on, and that is that they drop drugs on you. That's chemical weapons. They drop AIDS on you. That's a biological weapon. And they have militarized your neighborhoods with police officers that are dressed like soldiers and that are carrying fully automatic weapons. They are building prisons or concentration camps. So we are at war. And war has been made upon us. And what we have to do is come together with the use of economics, with the use of proper education, and avoid the effects of the shots that the enemy is taking at us. Was the caller still on?
Yeah, caller. Go ahead, caller.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes. Brother Darrell, I want you to address this. Right now, the situation with the redrawing of maps for voting purposes, gerrymandering, etc. What do you think about where we are? And the Supreme Court right now has that, for example, on their desk, top agenda, being discussed until the final decision is made. What Talk to us about that and how you feel about that, the map, the redistricting, and everything else, because they're
Well,
talking about shifting all of that, and not just Louisiana, and other states too. Talk about that. Thank you.
well, I'll let you know what my thoughts of that thoughts about that are. There is a scripture in the Bible that says, "Your agreement with hell will not stand, and your covenant with death shall be disannulled." That's in your Bible. Your agreement with hell shall not stand, and your covenant with death shall be disannulled. Now, when you're dealing with the mind of white supremacy, that's hell, that's death. And all over the earth, whether it's in Africa, Australia, the mind of white supremacy has been a murderous, bloodthirsty mind. It has put other people into a condition called hell. Any agreement that you make, because the agreement was we were going to be more included, we were going to have black congressional districts, and we were just going to make nice and everything. But all those agreements are being broken. With the modern Supreme Court, as the Bible says, your agreement with hell will not stand. Your covenant with death shall be disannulled, meaning that the agreements will be broken. The enemy is going to break every single promise he ever made to black people. Any promise that you got, he's going to, if you join the military and you say, well, I'm going to serve like everybody else, he's not going to treat you fair. There are black officers who have been shot and killed in uniform, captains, lieutenants. They're blowing officers away who are in uniform that are black, harassing them, breaking into the house of war veterans and murdering them in their apartments. There's nothing that you can do to make this system accept you if you're black. Like nothing, okay? Nothing. And that's what we have to deal with. This is just all another phase of the broken promises that the Bible and other scripture talks about. The Holy Quran says that they take shelter underneath their oaths. So they make an oath and make you abide by an agreement, and then the whole time they're trying to undermine everything the entire time. This government has plotted against us, even as it has told us we're trying to make a more perfect union, while it was building prisons, while it was trying to gerrymander districts, while it was trying to undermine the court's interpretation of affirmative action. So all of the promises that were made in the 70s, in 2025, those promises are now broken. And this is just another phase in the many lies or broken promises that America has told her slaves, or her former slaves, because I'm no longer a slave, but the bottom line of it is her former slaves. Okay, they are going to break every promise, and they're going to undermine anything that you would try to do in voting, and they're going to make it impossible.
1 minute.
They're going to make it impossible. Yes, sir. Impossible for us to make it without unity. Phase of the lie exposure that is going on. This over time, because I really need to develop and open up this topic so that everybody kind of understands what we're talking about. When your children and your young men are mass incarcerated, thrown into concentration camps called penitentiaries, after selling drugs that they brought into the country, that's called war. These are acts of actual war and genocide on our people. And that's what you need to understand, because white folks get different sentences than black folks. White folks get probation. A black man will get 50 years. And that's what you need to understand. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Community Defender. We're going to be back at you with another powerful episode. And I promise I'm going to dig deeper into this topic so that we all understand. Remember, we love you on this program. We love Black people, and we don't apologize for it.